morning. I missed a part of your introduction because I found out I couldn't hear you and had to switch over to my phone. Thank you very much for having me. Tinyika, I want to ask if you can perhaps share my presentation because I've had to disconnect from my laptop.
Yes, sure. I'll do that for you.
I must say it's really lovely to see all the different participants and all the speakers. I'm really excited and realize I'm a geek when my morning starts off so beautifully, listening to Dr. Adriana Murray speak about Mars and how super, super intelligent we are as women.
Couldn't agree.
So while you start with the, while you start sharing the screen, okay, so there we go. Good morning, everyone. So it's a great honor. I'm timing myself. Anyone who knows me knows that I speak a lot. So I've really had to practice to keep this presentation down to, and this talk down to 15 minutes. Can you go on to the next slide, please? So good morning, everyone. So you will notice, oh my word, sometimes technology fails us. I changed my presentation about 20 minutes ago because I saw that there was an error with the font, but that doesn't matter. I have my brains and I can do this even though the font's a bit messed up. So I've spent the past 15 years diversifying my career. And what that actually means is that I was and I am a social worker. I grew up in the Netherlands and I studied social work. And I went from being a social worker in Amsterdam to moving back to South Africa and becoming a social entrepreneur in Port Elizabeth. And while I was doing that, I moved into technology and I became an impact entrepreneur. And I'm based in Cape Town, but I will travel wherever the work takes me or wherever projects take me. So for those of you who don't know me, I speak a lot about diversity. And I think the reason is that people ask me to speak about diversity is because for as long as I can remember, I've always been the odd one out. So this means that when I was growing up, I was often the only girl with curly brown hair and brown eyes in the classroom. And then when I became a social worker, I was the only social worker at the table saying that not only should we empower communities to, be mentally strong and to deal with social problems, but we actually also need to teach them about digital literacy, because if you're not digital, then what role do you play in society? So when I was asked to speak at this conference, I thought, I suppose there's no better person than the person who experiences the problem to talk about the problem. So I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen that have joined us, one thing. I'd like you to throw out into the chat, write down something that you're really good at. I'd prefer 3 things, but if you could do that, so I could just see, if you could just put in the group, what are you good at? Are you good at cooking? Are you good at coding? Are you good at development? Are you good at maths? Are you good at event planning? Are you good at problem solving? So please, all of us, I'd like to see these comments. Write down something that you are good at that we can share with the group. Fellow speakers, I'm going to ask you to start. So do that for us, please. And while you're writing some of these comments that you're good at, I'd also like you to write a statement about what makes you so different. So what is unique about you in your workplace? What is unique about you where you study, compared to the other students? And maybe what is unique about you in your family? Because we're all different. So while you are all doing that, I see Dee says she's good at playing tennis. So while everyone's putting in their comments, I'd like you to go to the next slide, Tinyika. Okay. So when I ask people to tell me what they're good at, most people find that difficult. They're usually very good at telling me what they're not good at. So I thought, let me start this session with telling you what diversity is not. So I'm sure all of you are familiar. You see lots of different, maybe you attend conferences or you see events, and you see, in this case, I've used the meme of all the white puppies, and where you see a heading is, we're talking about diversity and inclusion and everyone looks the same. Or we're having a discussion about diversity and inclusion and different thinking is not rewarded or allowed. Or maybe you even go to church and say, we welcome everyone, but if they look like Nicki Minaj, that's not who you're looking for. So, Tinika, can you go to the next slide? So when I was asked to do this talk, and of course, the theme is leading the way to diversity, I realized, okay, so I speak a lot about diversity, and I speak a lot about diversity and innovation and technology, but I'm not a technologist. So before I promote myself to being the specialist about this, I actually need to give some thought as to, I actually need to understand coding. So what I did last week, Friday night, which you do if you're a geek, is I decided to teach myself how to code. I went onto the internet and I looked up a website, and I went to the University of YouTube and decided to find out what this coding is about. And then I saw the coding guidelines. And for those of you that can see, it talks about taking advantage from the broader C++ community. It speaks about providing a foundation and common framework of perform code reviews. They speak about providing criteria for, I'm not even going to say this right, Trinanos, maturity levels. I mean, I can't pronounce it. I don't know what it is. And that's when I realized, oh yes, this is the reason why I didn't choose a career in STEM when I was still studying, because it's not my space. I don't understand it. It's not for me. But fast forward 25 years later, there are some advantages to getting older, is that I now know that there is absolutely nothing we cannot learn. Absolutely nothing. We may not be the best at the new skills that we teach each other, but we can definitely learn them. So I'd like to go to the basics. So if you see this, all these complex guidelines, I'd like to go to the next slide, and I'd like to just break down the guiding principles that coding uses. So principles to code by. The first principle they teach you when you learn how to code is to keep it simple. And what I understand and what I learned from doing my first few lines of code on Friday evening was that just because a problem is complex, it doesn't mean that we need a complex solution for it. And when you're developing code, you want to break these huge problems down into smaller sub-problems so it can be managed. And it's no difference in diversity. When people are looking at how do we get more different people on board, you want to look at simple reasons and simple things such as who's not sitting at the table. Are we all little puppies, or do we maybe have a cat or a rabbit, or do we have some women sitting at the table that will come with a different perspective? The next point that they teach you about is the separation of concerns. I had to Google this a lot, people, because it was really complex to me. But when I broke it down about what the separation of concerns mean, what it basically comes down to is that the separation of concerns is basically all about order. So the overall objective of the separation of concerns is to ensure that we have a well-organized system, and it means that all the code is meaningful, and that there's consistency, and that there's a flow in it. And when you look at businesses or organizations that we work at, or even the businesses that we run, we all know that to ensure that we've got the best possible solutions is that we need different ways of different thoughts. We need different people that have got different skills. So we may need someone that's good at playing tennis. We may need someone that's good at developing the app for keeping the tennis scores. You wouldn't want 10 marketers, you wouldn't want 10 business developers, because we need finance people and we need the technical people if we're building successfully. The next principle they talk about is don't or do not repeat yourself. Albert Einstein had a quote, and he speaks about, insanity is consistently doing something the same way. And I find that as humans, whether we're technical humans or non-technical humans, we're so attached to what we think we know that we keep on addressing problems in the same way. And we maybe just package them differently, but our solutions are always the same. And in coding, what I found out is that the fact of not repeating yourself is looking that there is a logic in what you're coding. So what it means is that if you have all these different elements, and in a business, it would mean if you have all of these different departments. And in the case of diversity, it would mean if we have all of these different people sitting at the table, we make sure that our solutions are stronger, that there's logic to them, and that everyone can pick up where perhaps someone drops the ball. Simply put, if you're starting a school, you don't only want teachers, because a school is nothing without the students, and it's nothing without anyone who takes care of the environment and the facilities. So that's what we say when we need diversity. We need a whole different bit of parts to make up the whole. The next part that they talk about is divide and conquer. And in technical terms, I'm very proud to share with you what I learned is that it's called recursion in coding. And basically what that means is something that took me a long time to figure out. So when I first moved into innovation and technology, I was mesmerized by the way the people spoke. I was mesmerized by the words that they used. I just thought it was absolute magic to be able to create something. But in the past 11 years, I've learned that it's not magic. It's a skill. And how do we excel in our skills? By practicing. So the concept of divide and conquer in coding, but also in diversity, is practicing all these new skills, all this new way of thinking until we own it, until we've got this, until we've conquered the skill and we can call ourselves professionals. So if you have practiced something, I think Dee said was the first one who made the comment about being good at tennis. She didn't wake up and was good at tennis. She practiced until she got it. So diversity and inclusion requires practice, people. It requires us to constantly ask ourselves, who's not sitting at this table? Who are we creating a solution for? And are the people that we're creating the solution for, are they involved in this discussion? And lastly, the principles speak about always test your code. And I think the simple way in diversity and inclusion is ensuring that whatever solutions we come up with, that we test them. Nothing is perfect in code. Nothing is, what we learn isn't perfect. It takes a whole lot of practice. Lastly, I'd like to share with you on the last slide that the simple explanation of diversity. Tinika, the next slide, you can't read it. I'll read it out for you. It's the concept of diversity, and what it does, it entails acceptance and respect. It means understanding that everybody is unique and recognizing our unique and individual differences. It requires us to be bold, and it requires us to invite everyone to the space that we occupy, even if they don't look like us, even if they don't sound like us, but recognizing their strength. Thank you, Girl Code. It's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts with you.